Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. So this is the DBX-07 and I was gonna resurrect it and repair it for doing some off-road, but no one off-roads vehicles this big or races them. And I ran into a bunch of guys that are taking vehicles like this and the big Armas, and it's they're doing some parking lot racing, and it's pretty much a, you know, bring what you got. A lot of people are doing custom builds, tricking stuff out, and looks like a lot of fun. And they invited me to come on out and join. And so I am going to do that. What I'm going to do, since this is going to be asphalt, I'm going to lower it down. And I've got a set of wheels that I've had sitting around for a while. It's a Proline wheel. They're called Road Rage. They were made for things like the Armas and other, you know, big monster trucks that you might want to drive on road. And so it's a much better tread for asphalt. And I ordered the parts that I needed. They finally came in. I got a new diff. I got some spare diff parts. I got a few spare front end pieces in case things bust up. This was like, I think this was like $5 or $6. It was ridiculously inexpensive. It's an aluminum servo saver mechanism down here in aluminum, so that'll be replaced. And of course I've got the new shocks and such, so I'll be doing a build with those with a shorter stroke and a lower ride height. I don't recall if these, yeah, these are just like a lot of RC cars. They don't, or do they? Yeah, they've got ride height tabs, which can be adjusted. So this should be quite easy to modify and make it more of a road going chassis. I think it was originally designed that way anyway, as a road car, but that's what I'm going to do with this for the time being. I may convert it back to off-road. That's easy, and as rebuilding the shocks and making suspension adjustments and changing wheels and tires. I also have the instructions on how to reprogram the speed control for dual 4S batteries instead of the 3S batteries that it comes with, and I have a pair of large 4S batteries. So that should make it a lot of fun to race with. I'm going to take it mostly apart. I want to rebuild the center diff with a much thicker fluid. I want to rebuild the front and rear diffs, just clean them out, make sure that they don't need any spacers, that none of the gears are you know, spaced incorrectly. And I've got a new servo on order. I'll put a picture of it up here and the name. It's a high torque and yet still high speed all metal servo. Very nice price, and that will make this steer a lot quicker and have a lot more control, less lag time between input and action. And I'm also going to swap out the receiver for a fly sky, so I can use my much higher option Noble transmitter with this, and that should also really improve things. So this should be a lot of fun to race on pavement once all this is done to it. So I'm going to start with the disassembly. I'm going to show you this in bits and pieces as I go through. I'm not going to show you every nut and bolt like I do on builds, because a lot of this is just taking stuff apart. I'm thinking about what I can do for the suspension, as in there's no pill adjustments that you can make. I think you can adjust the toe. There's no way to adjust anti-squat. I think that the oval shaped pills can be flipped 180 degrees and increase rear toe, but that's the extent of it. So I may either create or 3D print some wedges that can be placed under the rear differential to increase or decrease anti-squat, because that would be really handy for running this on road. Also, possibly increasing the kick in the front, which is kind of similar to anti-squat. It's just different terminology. It also impacts caster. This is a fully adjustable suspension setup. Can adjust bump steer, Ackerman, you know, toe, camber, everything. So I should be able to get some interesting results. And again, it sounds like a really nice bunch of people. They're having a lot of fun racing on several nights a week, on weeknights. So this won't interfere with weekend racing, and so we'll see how it goes. First thing I need to do is replace the broken parts, the rear diff. I'm going to take things apart, do a lot of cleaning, and we'll go from there. So I'll kind of like take stills or do video bits on parts of this, but mainly, again, I'm just disassembling and reassembling. Okay, just to give you some things, the rear assembly here, the rear suspension and diff comes off very easily. There's a big screw that goes through the across the top here, and then there's 4 screws that go through the chassis into the diff case, and that's it. This whole thing just comes right off. Now I'm taking off the little body panels and stuff so I can see what's going on and how much stuff I'm going to take off, how many things I'm going to leave on here. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, and make up my mind kind of as it happens. But it looks like I'm going to need to take a lot of this, everything back here off to split this case, because the rear case, the back end of it comes off, and you've got to take a lot off. Like here's a seam right here, so I've definitely got to get this whole rear cage off, because this back piece is going to come out. But that's fine. You got some interesting sized hardware here. There's a lot of 2.5 millimeter wrench, and there's even some 3 millimeter hardware, which is pretty big. But you know, again, the size of the vehicle, not surprising. Just make sure you have those wrenches. The 3 millimeter is pretty common to most wrench sets. Most wrench sets start at a 1.5, a 2 millimeter, a 2.5, and a 3 millimeter, and those are the 4 base sizes. Anyway, I just wanted to show you some stuff as it's coming apart. Okay, I wanted to show this to you up close. Look at that damage. I mean, aside from the rust, it actually sheared right into the fat of it. Just blew out the side. I mean, literally, it didn't come out this way. It went out like that. I mean, there's the, you know, where the dog bone, the round ball with the little spikes just blew through there. That is some torque. So anyway, obviously this needs to be repaired or rebuilt. I did get a new one. And so I may just go ahead and I'll probably open this at some point to see what's in there. I'm going to use the same shims, or at least check the shimming on it. with this new one. They give us shims in this bag, which is nice. I am going to rebuild this, and I'm doing a pretty interesting fluids on these diffs. I'm going to do the center diff with 500,000. I'm going to do the front diff with 100,000, and the rear diff I'm going to do 15,000. It's going to be very light. The rear is going to have a lot of maneuverability. The front end is going to want to pull the car straight. That way I can get rid of this rear toe and just have the rear tires going straight ahead. That'll make it a teeny bit wider in the rear, and I won't be chewing tire all the time because I'm not running in dirt. It really doesn't, I don't think it needs the rear toe, and it certainly won't with that heavy front diff. So we'll see how that goes. It should be interesting at the very least. Experimenting. So I cleaned the bulk of the nasty grease that was in there. I'm going to put in just good old TLR black grease when I reassemble this assembly here. There's a little bit of plastic chipped away, but it's nothing that's going to impact it. Everything's going to still seal up and be fine. I noticed that there was no adjustments. These inexpensive cars, you really need to rip them apart and rebuild them because so many little things aren't done. For example, we've got our sway bar, we've got our rear sway bar bracket, we've got 2 grub screws that you use to adjust to make sure that the sway bar, you know, isn't rickety. And look at the 2 holes for the grub screws. The grub screws didn't even come through. They just stuck them in like for looks and never adjusted the rear sway bar's tension. They just, oh well, it's fine, throw it together, you know. So take care of stuff like that yourself. Don't just assume that these things are done. One of the things I noticed when I was driving it in a big open field and really letting it get up to speed, I was speed testing it. I think I got over 50 miles an hour, and I'd give it a little bit of brake and it would just do this nose over flip. And it's like, what? No rear brake? And that's one of the reasons that I'm going to, you know, put the 500,000 diff fluid in there. I want to have very little difference between front and rear. I don't want to lose power on the asphalt to a center diff, and I want that center diff to give almost equal amounts of power to the front and rear diffs. And then the front diff, being very stiff also, is going to really conserve power. It's going to really pull the car down the track. And with the really loose rear diff, I don't have to worry about the rear, you know, conspiring against the front diff to try to get it out of line. Because that's where any slippage is going to happen. It will be happening at the back. So that should be good. And then, you know, adjusting this brake so that almost all of the pressure is going to the rears. Because otherwise it just does this end over, and that's not very good. You know, you come into a turn, you know, really fast heading into that oval turn, and you give it some brake and the car just flips onto its top and slides to a stop against a curb. I mean, no, don't want that. So anyway, I'm going to pull this apart. You guys have seen me do diffs many times. If you haven't, go to any of the recent videos on all-wheel drive cars, and you'll see many a gear diff being assembled. A lot of this stuff too is just steel. It's not painted well or coated. It will rust very easily. So clean your car up, hit it with a blow dryer, or whatever you got to do to get moisture off it in between runs if you take it out into the mud and water. And if you take it out on the sand on the beach or something like that, oh my God, get ready to disassemble it completely, because it's going to get sand in all the good spots and it'll just destroy it. And then the salt water will eat away at everything that doesn't get mauled by the sand. So you take care of these things and they will last a very, very long time. You don't, and they come apart in no time at all. So onward to the rear diff build. I have no idea what they put in these things. I don't know if they even bother to use a proper diff fluid. They may just fill it with grease. Okay, I came across a little problem. The drive shafts don't quite fit back here. They're 103 millimeter. And when I say don't fit, I mean they are like a half a millimeter short. That when the axle is horizontal, it's actually at the very back of the outdrive here. It's actually touching. So it makes for a kind of a sticky situation. You can see how that kind of clicks in and out like that. So what I've done is I have flipped the hub, okay, because the hub is longer to the inside than to the outside. It's not symmetrical. So turning it 180 degrees yields plenty of room. So it's still well in there. And just to be sure that it wasn't an issue with the linkage, I adjusted the linkage and then put a bubble gauge on it. And as you can see right now, it's actually a little into the realm of positive camber, not negative camber, when negative camber is really what we're going to want. So then the next question is this an issue for wheels? And the wheels that I'm going to use on this, there's no issue. Oops. It's hard to hold that with this heavy wheel on here. So there's no issue. It's a long way away, at least 4 millimeters from hitting the wheel. The stock wheels also have plenty of clearance. So do the other aftermarket wheels that I've got. So this is not going to be a problem. In the worst case scenario, you could always take a Dremel and grind off that outer hole and narrow this piece up, but it's not necessary. It fits just fine. So I also did something else. I want to, since I'm going to be driving this on asphalt at high speeds, I want it to be as stable as possible. So I lengthened the wheelbase front to rear by taking the 2 spacers that are normally one on either side here. There's a 2 millimeter and a 1 millimeter. And I put those both together on the forward side of the block here. That moves the axle slightly rearward. It isn't an issue as far as the angle, but it is for this. It's at a pretty steep angle. All you need to do is flip this 180 degrees and mount it on the back side of the shock absorber upright here. And you can use the very same hole, which is the bottom hole. That's the stock hole. So for the time being, that's the same geometry we had before. So instead of being at an angle like this, it lines up properly. We have a little bit of angle in the drive shaft. That's not a problem at all. And so everything goes together like that just fine. And we have a nice clean movement. I've got this right here so you can see. Here's our pin for our dog bone. Any place in the even extreme travel, it's not anywhere near coming out. So, or it's not anywhere near hitting the back. It's right in the middle. You can't ask for better. So that is the way to use these drive shafts. This is normally the front drive shaft for your steering. And normally back here, there's just a regular dog bone, and the dog bone had a lot of maneuvering. You saw what it did to this, and it just ripped it apart because it got stuck. And that happens if the dog bone gets too far to the outer edge and one of the pins tries to get free, and it wrenches it over, and if you're going fast like I was, you get an explosive result. So I also swapped the pills around to take a little bit of the rear camber out. So it's still got, rear toe. It's still got rear toe, but it doesn't have as much. And there's nothing I can do about that. It is what it is. So they just don't give us parts for that. They don't make them. And that's not something you can 3D print. It would just get destroyed in no time. So that is where we're at. All in all, it's easy to take apart and put back together again. I haven't had any issues. So I'm going to go ahead now and flip this one to match this one, and go from there. So I'll pick up the video when I come to the next interesting part. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, the 3 holes here, you want to move the connection here from the center to the innermost. That makes it as close to the original geometry. So you can always move things around later, but this is what gets you closest to the baseline that we had. So, once you put this on a tuning board and make adjustments, you can figure out whether you're getting enough camber change, if you want camber change when the arm moves or not, etc. So worry about that after the fact, but you do want it in that hole to start, I think is the best way to go. That's my recommendation. So that is completely rebuilt except for the sway bar. I'm going to go ahead, mount the sway bar now, put this assembly back on, and then move either to the front, center, or to the front, and take stuff apart from there. Actually, it might be better to leave things off, but then you start misplacing things and forgetting which screw goes where. I'm going to go ahead and definitely mount up the sway bar, though. So one recommendation I have is that these wires very conveniently have connectors, bullet connectors. The only problem is they only put the color coding on the motor side. So get yourself some tape or markers, or in my case, I used some heat shrink. So I did red for orange, yellow for yellow, and just black for blue. You only need to do 2 in theory, because that way the third one is obvious. So that will help you plug everything back in correctly. Anything you can do like that during your disassembly to help yourself stay organized. For example, this is something I did right away, shortly after getting the model, was to color one of the connectors for the lights on either side of it. I just used a silver Sharpie. That way, when I plug things back in again after taking the body off, when I put it back on, I know which light lead goes to the which, so that way the all the lights go properly. So actually, the this doesn't really matter because it's a single cable. They've got a mile of wires crammed into the receiver box. I would just bundle them up elsewhere. I'm going to do that when I do this because the antenna was just wrapped in other wires. It's probably not a problem, but it wasn't very clean. I mean, it was just crammed through. So do what you want. Here's something kind of interesting. We've got this cover here that looks like it shields the pinion gear. It almost looks like it's touching the pinion gear. It also blocks the brake from moving forward. If I rotate the brake servo, you can see that it totally hits it right there and stops it. Now, it's got to be able to move further forward for it to be able to apply the braking arms. So when I was hitting brakes, I was obviously just getting, motor braking. I'm not sure I'm even going to bother with this. We'll see. For now, it's just going to come off, and we'll go from there, taking everything else apart.